There are 143 professional lectures, which consists of 14 professors and 56 doctors. We are focusing on how to create young administrators in very single field, which consists of the ability to lead and 56 in business. We are focusing on how we can level administration in the professional administrations, which consists of the ability. Public administration has 3 undergraduate programs: public administrations, library science, and education administration. In business administration, we have 3 undergraduate programs: business administration, taxation, and tourism science. Besides that, we have master and doctoral program. Master program consists of Master of Public Administration, Master of Business Administration, and Master of Art in Higher Education. For doctoral program of Administrative Science, we have Doctor of Public Administration and Doctor for Business Administration. We are also active in the ASEAN International Forum, such as Southeast Asian Governance Forum, Business Model Competitions, Governance Model Competitions, Tech on Conference and Seminar, and many more. There are 3 main components that create an administrator: problem solving, innovation, and integrity. Problem solving, this includes the concept of using out of the box, thinking to develop creative solutions. We have been contributing a lot of research to the environmental and society. We also help the government in facing the problems appearing in society. Innovative. We are always being innovative with new knowledge. We have modern facilities to create a fun education atmosphere. Students will be trying to learn new subjects with interactive process anywhere and anytime. Integrity. We are committing to science development and giving society knowledge to how to solve problems through science research. Let's see together. We are proof when you are in the Faculty of Administrative Science. More than 10,000 graduate students have found excellent work as administrators. So, what are you waiting for? Come and join us.
Lanjutkan. Iya. Teman-teman,
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Ika Arninoventi, and I will be the moderator for this event. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 3-in-1 program conducted by Public Administration Study Program, Faculty of Administrative Science, Universitas Brawijaya. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to Excellency Speaker from University of Trento, Italy, Associate Professor Marco Brunaso, Excellency Speaker from Regional Office of Directorate General of Treasury Maluku Province, Mr. Nur Faisal Ahmad, PhD, Excellency Speaker from Universitas Brawijaya, Assistant Professor Fadilah Amin, PhD, honorable colleagues and lecturers, and all beloved students. Before I invite the speakers to share their ideas, I would like to mention some rules information of this event. First, please turn on your camera on your Zoom screen. And second, please press raise hand button if you have any question, and I will call you when question and answer session has started. Or you can write down your question in the chat box, and I will read your question to the speakers. And then the third, for the audience, you can access the attendance form in the end of the session. And the last, this is information for all of the speakers. Each of you will have 20 until 30 minutes to deliver your course materials. Well, today's event is the second part of online course teaching in public finance and fiscal policy subject. Yesterday, we have already discussed that every single countries in Europe have different budgeting system and policy. However, European Union give effect to the budgeting policy of the country. We also discussed about the budgeting reform in Indonesia and also its implementation and challenges. So today, we will discuss about budgeting politics in European countries and Indonesia, and also the implementation and the challenges also. As yesterday, today we have three speakers. They are Professor Marco Brunaso from Trento University, Italy, and then Assistant Professor Fadilah Amin, PhD, the head of Public Administration Study Program, Universitas Brawijaya, and then Mr. Nur Faisal Ahmad, PhD, the head of Regional Office of Directorate General of Treasury Maluku Province. So let's start our online course. Please welcome our first speaker to share his course materials, Professor Marco Brunaso. Time is yours.
So, good morning, or good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Marco.
Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio in Italian. Thank you for participating to today's session. As announced yesterday, today I will mainly focus on the European Union level and the European Union budget. But before I start, let me share with you the presentation, my PowerPoint presentation. Why I have decided to mainly talk about the EU budget? Because, as I said yesterday, if you want to understand what is going on at the economic level, in the economic fields, in the member states of the European Union, more generally in Europe, you need also to take into account what is going on at the European Union level, because of several reasons. First of all, because the European Union has a budget, and even if this budget is quite limited, let's say it's around 1% of the total GDP of the member states of the European Union, in any case, is something, and it is relevant for many countries and many regions inside the member states of the European Union, as we will see later. And secondly, the European budget, and more in general, the economic decisions of the European Union are important because um, because after the adoption of the economic and monetary union, that is to say mainly the common currency, the euro, economies of the different member states are strictly interlinked and coordinated. So every decisions in macroeconomic policies, at least for the members of the Economic and Monetary Union, should be negotiated with the European institutions and coordinated with all the other member states and the different national governments. So what is quite clear is that even if most public policy within the EU continues to be made at the member states level, however, in a growing numbers of areas, including economics, foreign, and social policies, decisions are made at the EU level. And if you want to know how the budgeting policies work at the national level, you should also consider how the budgeting policy works at the EU level. And also, if you want to understand how the European budgeting policy works, the European Union budgeting policy works, you should also have a general understanding of the European Union and the European Union policy cycle. This is why I will start my presentation by introducing the policy cycle in the European Union. I will then introduce elements to understand the budgetary procedures in the European Union, so how the EU budget is adopted. I will say something about the European budget and from where the money are coming from and how these money are spent by the European institutions. And finally, I will conclude by introducing the answers, why the EU budget is useful to answer to the problems raised by the coronavirus and the COVID-19 crisis. There are different ways of approaching the studies of public policy. The most common method is to describe the study of public policy in terms of policy cycle. The problem with this approach is that it suggests that policymaking is more logical and ordered than it really is in reality. But this approach has also the advantage of imposing some order on a very complex process and very complex issues. In the case of the European Union, this cycle, the policy cycles, has 6 key steps: agenda setting, formulation, legitimation, adoption, implementation, and finally, evaluation. Let's start from the first one, the agenda setting. Agenda setting means that before a policy choice can be made, the existence of a problem must be acknowledged, and the problem must be accepted as legitimate concern of governments and placed on the public agenda. So it's like an agenda, a physical agenda in which it should be written a problem that it is interesting for the government to consider. And the definition of this agenda is affected by prevailing economic, social, and ideological values, by the nature of and extent of government authorities, and by changing levels of public and political interest. Some issues are perpetually on the agenda. Some never make it to the agenda at all, and some appears in certain period, and some other issues are just kept out from the agenda. No one thought that a pandemic was a problem for the European Union until the beginning of this year. And now the problem of the coronavirus is definitely into the agenda of the European Union. So this is not a permanent problem the European Union has to cope with. This is not in the institutional agenda of the European institution. But this is in any case an issue that entered definitely into the agenda, and now, as we will see, is looking for effective answers. So who is responsible of the definition of the European agenda? There is no one institution responsible of that agenda, because all institutions of the European Union and even the national governments have their own agenda. So there is an agenda of the European Commission, there is an agenda of the European Parliament, of the Council of the European Union, and so on and so forth. There is also an agenda of the bureaucratic institutions, and there is agenda of the different NGOs, think tanks, national governments, regions, and so on and so forth. So it is the definition of the agenda is a very competitive stage. But once a problem or a need has been recognized and it is part of the agenda, a response must be formulated. And this is the second step, the formulation step. And this means that the European institutions should develop a plan or a program in order to answer to the problem entered into the agenda. And the main institution in charge of this formulation phase is the European Commission. European Commission is composed by 28 representatives, let's say, of the member states, acting for the promotion of the European Union interests. So they don't act as really as national representative, because they have to promote the interest of the entire European Union. And in this case, their role is particularly important because the European Union has the sole power to initiate new legislation. And so the European Commission is responsible for protecting the treaties and ensuring that their spirit is expressed in specific laws and policies, and the European Commission is also in charge with overseeing the EU budget. However, if the European Commission is particularly important in this stage, in any case, it doesn't act in a vacuum. The European Commission always listens to national governments, to the public opinion, to the political parties, to the interest groups, to the corporations, the polity think tanks, and so on and so forth. So there is this phase, this step, this formulation phase is a very pluralistic phase, and the European Commission has the role of, let's say, negotiate and coordinate the different proposals and find the synthesis of the different proposals. After this phase, there is the phase of legitimation. Legitimation means that legitimation is a process by which a government gives legitimacy to its action. And in other words, its policy must be converted into generally acceptable means for achieving its objectives. Under this respect, the European Union is particularly weak. It's weak because there is an authority gap in the European Union because there is no one institution comparable to a national government in the European political system, and because the citizens feel that they are very far from the European institution. In any case, in the last year, since the 70s, particularly since the 8th of the 70s, the European Parliament is elected by the European citizens, and this direct election has strengthened the legitimation phase of the policy cycle and more in general, the legitimations of the European institution. For stage adoption is a responsibility of the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union. So once a proposal of from the European Commission has been approved, in order to become a European law, let's say, it must be also approved by the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union. So by the institution representing the citizens, the European Parliament, and by the institutions representing the national governments, the Council of the European Union. Fifth phase, implementation. Implementation is a responsibility, again, of the European Commission, but also of the national bureaucracies of the member states. And eventually, if there is no implementation, it is also under the this phase also seen the participation of the European Court of Justice. That is to say, like it is possible, like the judges of the European Union. Last phase is evaluation. And evaluation, again, is important. Look, it's carried out by the European Commission, the Council of the European Union, the European Council, the European Parliament, and the member states, the interest groups, and why not also the European citizens individually. So as you can see here, I just introduce you to this very briefly to the European Union political system, because it is important that before we start to talk about the budget, you have a clear idea of how this process is complicated, how the European Union is complicated. The European Union is complicated because it's a compromise between national interests, interest of the European Union, general interests of the citizens, and all the different institutions have to work together in order to arrive to a decision, a final decision. And this is clearly when we look at the budget procedures in the European Union. Because the three main institutions of the European Union must participate in the budget, in the definition of the budget of the European Union, accordingly to the policy cycles I have shown to you. The European Commission is in charge of draft the budget of the European Union and it has to publish this draft budget before the beginning of the month of September of every year. The Council at this point have the power to accept the budget of the European Commission and take a position, approve what is called a position, that is to say a document saying the budget of the European Commission proposed by the European Commission is good and it should be changed. But this position doesn't go directly to the European Commission, but it goes to the European Parliament. And the European Parliament here have two possibilities. It can accept the position of the Council and eventually accept the draft budget of the European Commission, or it has proposed amendments. It has 42 days in order to answer to the request of the European Commission and the Council. If the European Parliament approves or doesn't take any decision, the budget is adopted. But if the European Parliament adopt amendments, so the European Parliament does not accept the position of the Council, there is a conciliation committee. A conciliation committee is convened, and the conciliation committee is composed by an equal numbers of representatives of the Council and representative of the European Parliament. In that specific meeting, or in this series of meetings of the conciliation committees, the Parliament and the Council negotiate and have to find an agreement on a joint text. And this text is sent to both the institutions, the Council and the Parliament. But in any case, it is not compulsory. So the institutions, the Council and the Parliament, can reject the joint text adopted by the Council, by the Conciliation Committee, and eventually, in this case, the draft budget in general is rejected. Apparently, this is quite a simple procedure, but it is a very and highly political procedure, highly political. It's a simple procedure with the political, highly political saliencies. It means what I want to say is that this process has shown that there are many tensions between the European Parliament and the European Council. In general, the Council of the European Union, the national governments want to give less money to the European Union, and while the European Council, on the other side, always ask for more money for the European Union. So there is a tension because the government doesn't want to give money because they want to maintain their national sovereignty. The European Parliament wants the European Union as a bigger budget because it wants to shift the sovereignty from the member states to the European Union level. So it's a very interesting process of adoption of the budget because it's about what is at the end of the day the European Union and where sovereignty now is based, if on the national states or at the EU level. So, but using this procedure, the European Union adopt a budget, and the budget has two notable features. The first of all is that unlike almost any national budget, the budget of the European Union must be balanced. There is no EU debt, at least until the creation of a new instruments to cope with the with the coronavirus crisis that I will introduce in a minute. So, but in general, the budget of the EU should be balanced. So there is no EU debt, and the EU is spared the problem that normally accompany debt at national level. So the European Union cannot do investment, for example, in the markets, and the budget should, all the revenues and the expenditures should always be balanced. Secondly, second features of the EU budget is that the sources and the quantity of the European Union revenues have been at the heart of the conflict that have emerged during the evolution of the European Union. And the biggest battles have been over the balance between national contribution and the EU's own resources of revenue. So how is this EU budget financed today? At the beginning of the European Union, in the 50s and in the 60s, the budget were funded by national contributions. Italy, Germany, France contributed each with a 28% of the budget, Belgium and the Netherlands with around 80% of the budget, and Luxembourg, a small Luxembourg, only 0.2% of the budget. Nowadays, things are very different because the budget is financed from custom duties on imports from outside the European Union, is financed by a small proportion of the value-added tax collected by each member state. It's financed by a proportion of member states' gross national income, as I said, around 1% of the gross national income, in line with how wealthy the different member states are. So the contribution of Italy is higher than the contribution of Greece, for example. And other revenues also contribute to the revenues of the European Union budget, and notably tax and deductions from EU staff remuneration, contributions from non-EU countries to certain programs, or, I don't know, surpluses from the previous years. Is this a big budget? As I said, it is not really big in absolute terms. It's 148, around 150 billions euros per year, figures, 2019 figures. But still, it's a budget that it is very useful for the national governments because these money are very important, for example, for all the member states coming from Central and Eastern Europe, which have level of wealth that are lower than the level of wealth of the countries of the Western Europe. Or it is very useful for the regions. Southern Italy, Greece, Spain, and many regions in Central and Eastern European countries take a lot of advantage for their development from the EU budget. This money, even if this sum is quite limited, these money are very, very important for the development of these regions. This is even more clear in the university. We live, let's say, using or competing for the EU funds in research. We need those funds to move our students to go abroad in the Erasmus program. We need these funds to build bridges with Indonesian universities, for example, because these funds help your students to come to Europe and our students to live in Indonesia. So these funds are important, and this is a figures related to the expenditure, how the European Union spends this money. The European Union, when has decided revenues, it has to decide how to spend the money, and the decision on how to spend this money is taken in a multi-annual financial framework that has a time span of at a minimum of 5 years. Normally it's 7 years. So we are now at the end of the multi-annual financial framework 2014-2020, and the member states, the national governments, together with the European Commission and all the other institutions, are discussing about the multi-annual financial framework for 2021-2027. With these funds, the European Union supports many initiatives, as I said, and you can see the main headings of the chapters of the budget of the European Union: sustainable growth, natural resources, economic, social, and territorial cohesion, competitiveness for growth and jobs, global Europe, security and citizenship, and administration. So the European Union invests in innovation, research, education, training, transnational networks in energy, transport, telecommunications, development of enterprises, a regional policy, agriculture, very important, but also border protection, immigration, asylum policy, and so on and so forth. The European Union also invests in development assistance in third countries and humanitarian aid. For sure, many things has changed during the coronavirus. This is the last part of my presentation. Don't worry, I won't be too, I hope not to be too much longer. But anyway, the coronavirus has challenged the European Union for sure, because the COVID-19 crisis has seriously affected the European Union. The European Union and its member states are working together to reinforce the national healthcare system and contain the spread of the virus. At the same time, the EU and its member countries are taking action to mitigate the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 and support the economic and social recovery. So to support this process, the EU leaders agreed to work on a recovery plan for Europe. And on April 2020, they committed to establishing an EU recovery fund aimed at mitigating the effect of the crisis. So they add more money to the European budget in order to help the member state to recover from the crisis. And this new part of the budget, these new funds, these recovery funds, is now called Next Generation EU. So the entire budget the European Union will have for the next year, the 2020-2027 multi-annual financial framework is composed by two voices. On the one side, the multi-annual financial framework per se. The other voice is the Next Generation EU Recovery Fund. Through the European Union can use these funds in order to help many enterprises, for example, or more in general, the member states for recovering from this crisis. For example, using the European budget, until now, the European Union has provided medical equipment and has adopted less compulsory, let's say, legislation for the provision of medical equipment applicable at national level. The European Union has promoted research for treatments and vaccine. So my colleagues from the Department of Biology or Medicine are very happy about that, because it means quite a huge amount of money for their research. What is very important is that part of these new instruments, next generation EU, is based on grants. It means that the European Union give the member state the money, the real money. And the European Union have the possibility to give back this money until 2058. So it means that the European Union is giving to the state a lot of money without asking back this money for around 30 years. So it's a very important, very relevant instruments for helping the recovering of the European Union state. I stop here. So the budget of the EU, as you have seen, is always balanced, and despite the numerous crises, but in any case, many decisions have been taken in the last few months, in particular, to cope with the crisis. And even if the European Union is still there after a long history, 70 years history, it means that it is useful. And the budget of the European Union, it's an important instrument to show, even to the European citizens, that the European Union is effectively useful. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for Professor Bunaso for your material. And then for the second speaker is Assistant Professor Fadilah Amin, the head of... Oh, I'm sorry. The second speaker is Mr. Nur Faisal Ahmad, PhD. So time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Ike. Good afternoon all. So today I will continue from the previous discussion. In the previous discussion, we discussed about the characteristic of Indonesian budget in the normal time. And today we will try to discuss about how Indonesian government respond to mitigate, to overcome pandemic COVID-19 in Indonesia. So maybe there's some opinions from myself, not from institutions, and let's see what we will discuss today. Of course, we'll discuss about, for me, I will try to explain about regulation in normal time, and in extraordinary time is different. And then let me see about yesterday we discussed about fiscal rules which implemented in Indonesia, also about public choice, fiscal strategy, and how the role of actors when we face extraordinary event, and the impact in execution. And also I think that the important thing to see the aspect of communication between executive and other actors, including, as the previous day discussed, also about the accountability of the current policy. All right. It is important. I mean, it is interesting when I read the statement from Alan Sick, a scholar, very known scholar, when he said that crisis effect. Okay, let's see. Okay, crisis effect for a silent element of budgeting. First, we will see about whether Indonesian practice it affect the routines and procedure used to allocate and spend money. And also we'll see about political and managerial roles of participants in the process during handle COVID, and also incremental norms and behaviors system or change, and the management of budgetary conflict. Yeah. So we will see how government of Indonesia respond and set the budget, including how to deal with the stakeholders. Okay. Actually, I would try to sum that. Even that Professor Marco said in Europe they already respond in April, but I think Indonesia is still quite rapid as well in respond pandemic COVID in was that here in May. I mean then in normal regulation, normal rules, of course we have a mechanism how we absorb shock. Yeah. I mean, if usually when I explained in the previous day that we have a budget amendment process, and usually government will see whether the anomalies or maybe the differences will exceed 1%, 10% or not. Usually we will see about the inflation or maybe currency exchange, etc. But government think that these indicators is more than this 10%. And government think that needs the umbrella for the action. Why? Because as you know that in the previous history of fiscal policy Indonesia, when we try to help to bail out some national banking, and then some low consequences of the policy. So that's why government think that it needs umbrella for this action. And also the agreement how to share the burden among institutions. So actually, as I said in the previous day, that law already enacted in October in the previous years. Yeah. The total budget around 169.4 billion, and then the deficit set less than 3%, minus 1.78%. But when we see that the COVID getting bigger and bigger, we see in February, March, and then April. So that's why government discussed in May to issue emergency decree, right? Perpu number 2 in 2020. And then, of course, this from the government perspective, but it should be discussed with Parliament. So after discussion with Parliament, consultation with Parliament, the amendment is acted in also in the same month, May 2020. But it need detail. So in President decrees, government try to make in detail. So actually, twice government issued President decree number 54 and 72, and then you can see that deficit is changed from minus 5.07 higher become minus 6.34%. Of course, government see predicted action should be done in the future in this year. And then if we discuss about fiscal rules, of course, government emphasize about counter-cyclical approach that we do not want that economic become worse and worse. Of course, government apply temporary easing fiscal rules. When I say that in the previous day, budget deficit should be less than 3%, but based on this law, government open this deficit limit more than 3%. And then it can be applied as was that discussion with Parliament within the next 3 years between 2020 to 2022. So we expect that in 2023, budget deficit will be less than 3% again. And of course, because it's COVID, from health aspect and impact to social aspect, economic aspect, and financial aspect. So the focus of fiscal rule allocation to support health sector. As I said before, only 5%, it become more than 5%. And government try to maintain demand and supply approach because actually when it impact economic, it should check how the demand from the people and also supply from the business sector. I would like to sum that government apply brick and mortar policy approach. That's the point on if COVID getting higher again, so try to break economic expansion. But if health issue is getting better, so government try to push economic intervention. And then what the government do with fiscal strategy? Actually, law give the government flexibility for government to take all policies, yeah, and also allocation. How the government apply the strategy? The first one, government try to refocusing, which means that cutting current expenditure and actually not cut capital expenditure, but to expand, which means that shifting the current capital expenditure to the following years. And also it become a source for mitigating pandemic. So from this action, government can get 97 billion from line ministries and agencies, and also can save 6.3 billion from local governments. And of course, this money is allocated to support health, social security net, and also business. As you can see that the main focus in health, but also how support people demand, try to give disburse money for social security net, and also try to maintain supply for business people. And the issue not only because when we see that COVID also affect government budget, particularly from revenue side. So gap between revenue and expenditure become bigger. So government also consider new source of financing. Of course, from the current financing instrument, government try to do front-loading strategy, which means that government issued bond, particularly global bond, in advance compared with the usual agenda. So money already fulfill the government account balance. And then also with discussion with central banks, divide sources, share burden. Particularly, of course, government has normal sources, but also with central bank support government for buying government bonds, whether in secondary market on also primary market, and we segregate between bonds used for public goods, and also government bonds with issues for non-public goods, because we set different interest rate for public goods and also for non-public goods. There's the agreement with central bank. There's the implementation of sharing pain with central bank. And then in May, government launched National Economic Recovery Program. Government commit to fund certain money, 46.35 billion USD, which consists for health sector around 5.8 billion. It is for pandemic task force for providing supplies, medicine, devices, and create more rooms for COVID patient, and also for allowance for doctors, nurse, and or paramedics. And then 13.6 billion for social security sector. It is distributed for household aid, staple foods, income support, electricity subsidies, and also unemployment training. You can see that government try to minimize burden for the people because the impact of pandemic issue affect social and economic aspect as well. And government also support economic sector, allocate 26.9 billion for for line ministries, local government, and also for supporting banking sector. So government creates some policy for labor intensive programs, some incentives, subsidies, and then guarantees, and also all types of tax incentive like allowance, holidays, and also refund. And government to support national bank also put their monies in commercial banks, and then still do SOS, state-owned enterprise investment, and expand local government loans. Of course, in budget execution, there's a need to accelerate budget execution. When yesterday, one professor said that the execution in Indonesia still quite low. Actually, yes, because it takes times from a law because the government has to set warrant as well, and then after that execution. Of course, government try to simplify procedure for approval and disbursement. That's the issue. I mean, in execution, different with the normal situation. Some regulation is simplifying, including government try to give line ministries early payment and local government early payment. Because in normal process, so from the commitment, the first commitment, and then verification, after that payment. But in this stage, after commitment, payment, and then verification will be in the next stage. Of course, the problem from this relaxation, simplifying the process, there's some exclusion error because the problem of data and etc. Of course, government concerned about better allocation, rapid execution, and also good performance. If I see both from because some scheme actually there's already applied in the current budget, but to mitigate COVID, some schemes extend, which mean in allocation also beneficiaries, but others there's new scheme for this year. I mean, if we talk about line minute spending, is still similar with the current situation, including investment in state enterprises, but in this new budget, the government tried to expand more allocation for household aid and also beneficiaries for unemployment training, more incentive for local government fiscal balance. Yeah, but usually government never use this scheme, but this year try to provide staple food. Usually government send e-money to the people, right? But at this time, the government provide staple foods. And also this year try to support income for people affected by maybe lay off from the job and etc. And also give some incentive, particularly to small, medium enterprises, because there's the backbone of economic Indonesia. Yeah. Okay, and then about the actors, I think all people, all institutions takes responsibility. But I think, from my opinion, the role of Minister of Finance in crisis become more significant. Yeah. In the previous discussion, I explained that in the normal situation, we try to segregate duty, responsibility between CFO, Ministry of Finance, and also like Ministry as COO. But in crisis, the role of Ministry of Finance become more significant. Even I see that central government takes more responsibility than sub-central government, shifting the balance of power towards the central governments. Yes, I think that's my opinion from main actors. And then about communication, why I put this discussion, because I think it's important, because when we discuss about extraordinary, we need to convince so many parties. Yeah, we need to build political consensus and also public awareness with Parliament particularly, because like I said before, that there's hearing to explain the policy in mitigating the impact of COVID in all sectors, and the Parliament agreed to approve amendment budget. And then also not also external but internal within government, how President emphasize order all minister to have sense of crisis and act in extraordinary manner. Yeah, because the issue about the execution. Yeah. And then, of course, government try to build confidence to, of course, people to obey health and protocol. And then, of course, inform policy and progress, what the type and allocation, how much money and how much has been realized. And then, of course, government try to set tone positive for economic recovery, even though that this second quarter, the economic growth is still negative. And then discuss with local government, because I said before that we have to share responsibility with local government. Local government has to adjust their budget. Yeah. And regional recovery will support national recovery. And of course, not only internal, but also creditor who will buy government bond. Yeah. Clear policy will make creditor more confidence with Indonesian economic. And then about accountability, in the previous day, I explained about the roles of Supreme Audit Institution, and then in internal government, we have internal auditors. Even within minister, there's Inspectorate General. But accountability here, good governance is always be applied in execution and accountability process. Yeah. Because like I said before, that we have bad experience when we try to support bad banking performance before. Of course, government try to relax seeing some regulation. When I said that shifting controls, because try to disburse money first and then verified later. But of course, government try to use this one, strict liability applied. If someone has like bad will to use the scam, of course, he or she will be punished. And then to support the implementation, government also asks Anti-Corruption Commission, public prosecutor, and national police to support the state economic recovery program. Of course, in order to mitigate misuse of fund, and then they also state like Professor Amin said in the previous day, try to not to state to make people afraid to do to execute budget for recovery program here. Okay, in sum, I think I try to say that actors in Indonesia need umbrella for quick action. Yeah, particularly as from the perspective Ministry of Finance. And then fiscal rules is adjusted in medium term. And then because it is shared burden, so mixed fiscal monetary policies are applied. Roles, all actors should support shared burden. And MOF, I believe, as central agencies, like in previous day, Professor Marco said, who will be central agency? Yes, in crisis, the role of Ministry of Finance is significant to make all actors deliver their function in crisis. And then about information, many channels of communication are used to convince many parties concerning the program. Not only program, but also execution and accountability is kept even though relation is applied. And then government try to evaluate the progress. So results vary, but policies are monitored and fine-tuned apply. Because when the new scheme is executed and then the progress is quite low, government try to see it again, what the problem, and then do some reduction in the procedure and etc. I think that's all what I can explain about the state, how the government respond to mitigate, overcome pandemic COVID-19 in Indonesia. Of course, it in effect government budget and it need quick response, but governance still be maintained, applied in execution and also in accountability. That's all. Thank you, Mbak Ike. That's all. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nur Faisal Ahmad, for your presentation. And before we continue to the third speaker, to all students, please turn on your camera so we can look at your happiest face expression. And now we come to our third speaker, Assistant Professor Fadilah Amin, the head of Public Administration Study Program. Time is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, sorry, Okay. Thank you very much for the chance. Let me say thank you, and maybe good afternoon to Marco Professor. Is it still already afternoon or still morning in Trento?
Is it still morning?
Still morning?
11 a.m.
Okay, nice to see you again here.
Nice to see you too.
Then also Dr. Nur Faisal. Thank you very much for joining us for the second day today. Well, consistent with material that I already presented yesterday. I would like to focus on this material that I already studied yesterday about the fiscal budgeting policy at local government level. And then yesterday I already briefly explained about the policy at local government level regarding the budgeting policy. Start from reform and then followed by some further activities. Well, hang on. So again, just refresh the material that I already presented yesterday about the reform itself in the budgeting policy, reform of budgeting policy at local government level. Is on all process of budgeting process itself, including the formulation, validation, execution, supervision, and accountability. And some change in here. And what I would like to present today is that about some positive notes as the consequences of the reform that I already mentioned earlier. First is after reform at local government level, there is dramatic change, as I already say as well yesterday. That is now local government have great authority to manage their annual budget. It's called APBD. In bahasa Indonesia, we can say anggaran pendapatan dan belanja daerah. It is or annual budget for local government. So together with this phenomenon, the financial balance between the central and local government now has become better, because it was before reform the capacity of in terms of finance is very heavy to the central government, and then at that time, as I also explained yesterday, local government only receive the and just waiting for the gift generosity from the central government, something like this. But now there is like pattern how to imbalance between central and local level. And now local governments and local parliaments, they have now great discretion at all stages of the budgeting process. And also related to the statement said by Dr. Faisal mentioned earlier, that is in the local government level also they have to refocus budget allocation in the pandemic situation, something like this. It is obviously instructed by the central government. However, in like to decide what activities, for real activities executed for the local society, for example, to improve the local economic condition, something like this. It is completely up to the idea or the policy of local government leaders. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, great amount of funding, about 1/3 of national budget, is transferred to the local government, and including the village fund. That is, every village now accept a lot of portion or allocation of budget. And then at this pandemic situation, like this, that currently almost all local government face this kind of situation. The village fund that is normatively have to be utilized for developing infrastructure and also for conducting empowerment activities for local citizen. But now they have to refocus these funds to recover local economy. So we can see that during this year, maybe there is no any development activities in the village level, because almost all village fund has been refocusing to the some other activities to deal with the impact of pandemic. And then now the legislature nowadays has much more wider political authority. So before reform, particularly the local parliament, legislative branch at the local government level, they like their position was like only the rubber stamp of the policy of executive branch. But now, under the new constitution, not new actually, it was already issued 2 decades ago. But it is considerably new actually. It is the legislative members in the local government, they have so much wider political authority to decide whether the proposal of budget proposed by local government will be validated, will be accepted or not. So that's why this condition, which is the legislature has wider political authority, give give two impacts together, both negative and positive. I will tell a little bit later what the negative impact of this thing. And then the other positive situation as the impact of the budgeting policy reform is nowadays the non-governmental bodies now they have access to control and supervise the management of budgeting of local finance. So it was almost impossible happens in the situation before reform. At the time, only the government themselves, even for government at that time, only the particular bodies that had authority to access regarding the budget and finance in general. However, now actually all people they have authority to involved to join to participate in supervise the management of local finance. However, in real practice, even though it's not really perfect, but again, there will be better situation compared to the previous era. But again, in real practice, still some problematics emerge in the real situation. And then let's say move to some other aspect, which is other than the positive notes, positive achievement after reforming the budgeting policy. In here, unfortunately, still there are some phenomena that is not really make us happy actually. First is the local government are still very dependent on funding sources from the central government. Yeah, I can I can provide the rough data in here. That is around 80% of local government budget comes from funds transferred by central government in form of balancing funds that I mentioned before. Hang on, I just yes, this fund. So it is actually the balancing funds consisting of three main kind of funding, including general allocation fund, special allocation fund, and sharing fund. It is merely the funds or money transferred by the central government. So even though the financial condition of the local government is now much better than previous era now, but in fact, in reality, local government now are now still very dependent on funding transferred by the central government. And then consequently from this situation that I mentioned previously, that is until now local government still face the problem in form of budget deficit. Yes, I can present the rough data in here. Around 80 to 90% of local government in Indonesia every year set up their budget in deficit condition, so deficit budget. Even though the percentage of the deficit varies from one local government to others, but mostly they set up in deficit condition. However, again, from the situation of budget deficit, something like this, it is a little bit like irony in here, or paradox maybe. That is, in one condition, that is local government mostly in the condition of deficit of budget. However, there are still high percentage of unutilized budget every year. So data from the Ministry of Home Affairs, if I'm not mistaken, this around more or less 30% of local government budget are not executed. It is a lot of various aspects, various things that cause this condition. One of one of cause one of factor causing the big amount of unutilized budget, something like this, is because the high what is it high level of political authority of belong to owned by local parliament that I mentioned before, because the local government because local parliament, local legislative now currently they have big authority and then strong position, good bargaining position in front of local government, local government staff, local government official. They usually it is very thick, very strict procedure in order to validate the budget proposal presented by local government. So because the discussion process in the parliament to validate budget proposal is prolonged, can be finished in the proper time, something like this. Usually the validation process is untimely, something like this. So the consequence of this condition is usually the time for executing the budget is very limited. That's why it costs high percentage of allocated budget is unutilized. So as well, the confusion of local government official due to a lot of new regulation issued within a relatively short term. Let's see. Let me tell you all that is under the new order regime before reform. The constitution regulate the local government is only one within the period almost 25 years. Law 74 law number 574 or something, and then it valid until nearly 2000. However, now usually less than 10 years, or maybe, or even from the collapse of the regime until the start of the reform order that is currently regulated in Indonesian government, and only 5 years the Indonesian government already replaced the previous law, and it's this condition happens frequently. So again, there are some negative notes here that I including that I already explained before, and then also in here related to the previous explanation that I already presented, the executive legislative conflict. It makes prolonged process of formulation and validation of local government budget. So that's why the time available for executing budgets become very limited, because the time is already consumed by this process. And then also eco-sectoral. I don't know whether it is understandable or something. Eco-sectoral. I mean, the among government body, like there is egoism to prioritize the mission or vision of their body. So they usually like disregard the other vision or other purpose of other government body. So there are a lot of conflict among the local government bodies themselves. Well, so it is the paramount of the some negative impact of this the reform in visa in the local government level, which is the issuance of new policy issued without any proper preparation and also socialization. So dramatically change of in terms of a lot of practical guidelines that have to be followed by local government staff. It triggers the confusion in the level of local government staff. So that's why there are a lot of executive and legislative official were trapped in the trouble because of corruption allegation. Yeah, as I mentioned before, that is from the situation that is local government staff only execute without any risk, and then now become they have to initiate and also create a lot of their own project, and then they have to accountability and so on and so forth. So again, it is not the simple thing. So as the consequences, we can see the fact in here from the 2004 until 2008. There's more than 2,000 local legislators had been sent to the court, and then most of them finally sent to the jail. And then only in 2020, in this year, the number of local government, local parliament members had been sent to the jail. Among the number of local legislative members, 184 people sent to the jail. And then in the period of from 2004 until 2019, 124 local government leaders, region and mayor, had been prosecuted due to corruption practices. It's very, very sad and very embarrassing, actually. But it is the fact that maybe, that's why maybe I can conclude from this thing that is fiscal and budgeting policy have built a good foundation for the financial management. Yeah, the evidence is, as I mentioned before. However, in here, there are a lot of still hard work that serious effort are needed to keep improving implementation of the policy, because the ideal result of the fiscal and budgeting reform is still far away from ideal condition. So I think that's all. Maybe if there is question, maybe we can discuss it a little bit further. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Amin. And now we are in question and answer session. For all participants, you can directly ask to the speakers after I mention your name. So for the first is Alifah Dava Ananda. Are you there? Alifah? Okay, Alifah, can you hear my voice? I cannot hear your voice at all.
Is this clear, my voice?
Yes, it's clear.
So I will. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Alifah Dava Ananda. So I have question towards Mr. Marco. Good morning, Mr. Marco. So I want to ask, in implementing the budget policy in European Union this year, of course, it will not be separated from the influence of global pandemic like COVID-19, and also unforeseen things like can cause the budget to undergo changes. What I want to ask here is, how is the budget changes mechanism in the middle of its implementation this year, and especially when the circumstances of each member of the European Union are facing might be different for each country. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Please, Donaso.
Sí. Thank you, Alifah Dava Ananda, for your question. The mechanism of changing the budget is quite easy in the sense that the European Commission can make a proposal respecting the ceiling established by the Council of the European Union and the Parliament in order to adapt the budget. For sure, it needs the agreements of the European Council and from the Council of the European Union and the Parliament to do that. But it's quite easy, I mean, in a way, to adapt the budget to cope with crisis, to face crisis like the one we are now living. But in the case of the coronavirus crisis, what was more important was the fact that the European Union decided not only to change the budget, but it decided to add more resources to the European budget. And the new recovery funds, it's let's say established in the framework of the negotiation for the 2021-2027 budget. So the European Union has decided to shift to adapt the 2020 budget by the end of April to the end of the year, and has decided to prioritize, to find new priorities for the new budget of 2021-27, and to add more resources. The addition, the fact that there are new resources, this has been decided mainly by the European Council, the Council of the institution representing the prime ministers in the European Union countries, and it's still under negotiation. They have now decided the general framework of the Next Generation EU program, but this Next Generation EU program is still under discussion, and it will be approved maybe by the end of this year, and the resources will be available since from spring 2021. So to be clear in answering to your interesting question, the European Union has changed the budget, but at the same time has decided to adapt the negotiation for the new budget for the new years, following the procedures you have seen. And at the same time, it has decided to add more resources following as a consequence of an intergovernmental agreement by the member states, the prime ministers of the member states. Was I clear? Is that clear? Did I answer to your question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's answering my question. I appreciate your attitude.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Prof. Brunasto. And then the next is Arnina. Are you there?
Can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can hear your voice.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Arina. I have a question for Mr. Nur Faisal Ahmad. So my question is how to measure the success in implementing fiscal policy in Indonesia government, especially in a fiscal policy to face the COVID-19 in Indonesia. Thank you.
Can I answer, Leno? Miss Ika? Okay, I try to answer your question. Of course, budget as a tool, and then of course we have expected outcome. I mean that as usual, we have economic growth target, and also we have target how to support business people, how to eradicate poverty, yeah, and then minimize discrepancies of from poor and the rich, and also create job. So that's as the target as usual, year and by year. Of course, pandemic affect this target. So I said you asked about the outcome from the policy. Of course, government at first try to solve pandemic first. I mean from health issue. Try to there's not another second wave for pandemic COVID. So that's why try to give some incentive for doctors, nurse, and other paramedics. We hope that all people affected by this pandemic can be treated well, right? And then we hope that the vaccine can be all defined, but can be produced and applied to all the people. That's the main point why government also focus certain money to support how to find the vaccine for this COVID-19. And then because it's not a sequential process, but recurrent process, so government also support, like I said before, about supply and demand side all together. So that's why government allocate some money for household aids, because try to measure whether the capacity of people to buy some things is lower or lower. And of course, this policy will be evaluated, because sometimes in other areas, when the government send money to the people still keep the money. they do not use this money for buy something. Actually, when the government try to give this money, actually it expected to be spent. Yeah. So small, medium, and enterprise can produce, and there's some buyers for their product. So you can see that if we support small, try to see all aspects from the health issue, from household demand, also, and support from small medium enterprises. Not only for this business sector, but also see the people still wait and see, because we also another indicators about purchase manufacturing index. All right, you can see that government always recent announced whether the PMI is less than 50 or more than 50, because there's a represent the commitment or maybe the eager of business people to do some expansion of their business. In the previous month, it's already more than 50, but in this month, it's going down again. So you can see that there's still like go or not go within this month and next month. So we'll see in the next following month. But as I said before, government always evaluate each scheme, because when each scheme that not run well, so government try to see what the problem, and they try to do some reduction. But of course, governance still be maintained. But the outcome, we hope that we can turn over from the current situation, bad situation, become better and better. We expect that in the last quarter, the condition getting better, and then can remove become good condition in 2020. And we hope we only use 3 years excuse in how we break our fiscal rules, right? I said that exceed 3%. We hope that in 2013 it become normal again. Thank you. That's my answer.
Thank you, sir, for your answer.
Yes, thank you for Mr. Nurfaisal. And then the next question come from Putri. Are you there, Putri?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can hear your voice. You can continue.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Putri, and my question goes to Mr. Marco. Good afternoon, Mr. Marco.
Good afternoon.
Okay, I want to ask, in your country, did COVID-19 make the budgeting policy unstable? For example, unexpected expenses occur or the other urgent circumstance, and how to fix them? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. No, thank you. No, in Italy, the budget was not unstable because the government didn't change the ceilings. The government changed only the priorities. So there was not a problem for this year, at least, of revenues. It was mainly the government decided to spend in different way the money they already had. But what was more interesting in the Italian case was that Italy didn't decide to face this crisis alone. Italy was among the countries, the most involved countries in pushing for the creation of a European recovery fund and the Next Generation EU program. Because if this year, let's say there was no need of help, or not very a very big need of help. For sure we will need them for the next year, but the answer cannot be found alone by one country, and certainly not by Italy. You know that Italy has a very high public debt. Yesterday the government announced that for the next year the public debt GDP ratio will be around 158%. So it's very high, one of the highest in the European Union. So for the actions of the government was mainly aimed at creating new opportunity for development at the European Union level. Because what is the reasoning after? Behind this approach? The reasoning is that this is not a national crisis. This is an international crisis, and moreover, this is a symmetrical crisis. The European Union has not, the COVID crisis has not eaten only Italy. It has affect all the European countries more or less in the same way. Italy was one of the worst countries in the first wave of the COVID crisis. We were in Europe the first countries in which the COVID crisis have an important impact. But now other European member states, other European countries are performing worse, much worse than Italy. If you look at France, if you look at Spain, if you look at Great Britain, for example, even Germany are now performing very, less better, let's say, than Italy. So, and apparently the other governments, national governments, accepted to the approach proposed by the Italian government, and this was not this was in a way an previously answer offered by the European Union. For example, in 2008 to 2010, when there was the very important economic crisis, the European Union was particularly slower in adopting decisions. So it took even 3 or 4 years to find agreements on new treaties for new investments and so on and so forth. In this case, Italy, together with France and Germany, had a very important impact on the decision of the European Union, and the recovery funds and the general framework of the recovery funds was adopted in very, very few months. So in general, the European Union is very ineffective in taking decisions. I mean, it's very slow because it's very complicated. 27 after Brexit member states are very difficult. to share ideas. But in this case, because of the crisis, because of the symmetry of the crisis, the European Union was much more was faster in taking a very historical decision. So thank you for your question, Putri.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prof. Brunaso. And then the last question comes from Sekar Akila. Sekar, are you there?
Yes. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for the change. And my question goes to Mr. Faisal. My question is how to protect budget lines to support growth, whether in the medium or long term, even in the pandemic condition like we are facing right now, and even in the crisis condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Scar, for your question. It's a hard question. I mean that all countries have the same problem, how to recover from this bad condition. Of course, like I said before, that we will set economic growth target. It's better like the several years ago, 5%, there's a normal target for economic growth. But it depends so many aspects, not internal and also external. But as I said before, that government should optimistic about the process, how we overcome the pandemic. Because I said before that communication is important when we create conducive environment for all, right? Not only government within government, government and central bank, government and local government, including with the people and the business people, including the creditor for our bonds. So that's why we try to convince that what we have done is in the right track, right? Because the confidence, the trust for stakeholders, that's important when we try to recover from this crisis. Of course, like I said before, that we have to solve health problem as well. That's why, wait and see, guess and total, right? The approach. Of course, government still prioritize health aspect first, because we see that other parties, even let's say we try to support financing aspect for whether for the people and also for business people. But if pandemic still exists, and then it still affect social aspect as well, social distancing and etc. It can affect economic growth. But of course, government try to refocus about how we provide telecommunication, IT, right? Because we try to support that we have to prepare, we have to ready for the new normal, yeah, including in education. So that's why we try to support that it will be the, let's say, the future mechanism. So that's why government try to allocate some cash aid for student. So and then also we in 2021 budget more allocation for IT, right? IT, shifting some budget to the IT. But in the same time, we try to check, we try to see the buying capability of the people. So that's why, like what's that? Cash transfer not only to household but also to the people who their job is affected by the COVID. Government try to support this one, including not only training but also if they already get training, government try to support if they would like to establish new business, starting new business. So that's why I try to support all my things. I think that's yeah, from your question. I hope I can answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you for Mr. Nur Faisal. So from our discussion today, we can conclude that pandemic may impact to European Union budget as well. Several budget priority must be changed to different way. And in Indonesia, budget at the time of pandemic today, the budget must respond rapidly to make economic stable as well as the health priority, but all policies must be monitored and fine-tuned. And then the last is, at Indonesian local government today, local government and local parliament have great discretion at stage of the budgeting process at the pandemic condition that refocus their budget to prioritize the local economic and local people health as well. So that's the conclusion of our discussion today. And for tomorrow we will discuss very interesting topic about Trento University and Ministry of Finance about the environment and also the possibilities for the students to do research, internship, and other academic activities. So please don't miss it and join our tomorrow agenda. We thank to all the speakers for delivering great materials today. Please give some virtual applause for them. And before we end our session for today, the committee would like to take a picture for your attending. So please start the video in your Zoom application and give your best smile to the camera. And we have 8 pages. For the first pages, please give your best smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then the second pages, please smile. 1, 2, 3. And the third page, please smile. 1, 2, 3. The fourth page, oh, there's no camera on. And the fifth page, there's no camera on also. And the sixth page, there's no camera on. And then the seventh page, there's no camera on. And so we already finished our take picture session. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the committee, thank you for making your time to join us this afternoon. It's been our pleasure to host this event. I wish you a great day. See you again tomorrow. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Mbak Ike,
Nur Faisal.
Professor Amin, Professor Marco. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mas.
Thank you all. Yep.
Thank you, Marco.
Well, thank you very much.
See you again tomorrow.
Yeah, sure. See you tomorrow.
Sure.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Mantap.